I'm Sarah Bivens.
And I'm Matthew Bivens.
We had a home birth back in 2016.
So we started a podcast about it.
And then grew it into a birth brand to help future and current parents believe in their success with home birth.
This is the place to hear home birth stories, along with helpful resources and tips to feel empowered and supported in your birth journey.
This is Doing It at Home. Greetings, loved ones. Welcome home. Today's episode is a peaceful birth followed by PPD and PTSD with Jamie Lazzeri. Before we get into the episode, just want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. If this is your first episode, we're so excited you found us. However you did, thank you to whatever person or entity brought you here, because this is a place for you to feel prepared, confident, and excited for home birth. We have over 360 plus and counting birth stories to share, all around answering the questions, the what ifs, addressing the fears, the doubts, reveling in the magical moments and the exciting, beautiful, transformative elements that birth has to it, and really celebrating that, and really kind of a hearkening back to what we used to do is gather and share our stories. So we've been doing this for millennia. This is just the 2022 version of that here on the podcast. And we've been doing this since 2016. And we're just so thrilled and grateful and humbled to be here. So thank you. If you are not connected with us further in all the other ways that you can be, please go do that. Go to our website, diahpodcast.com, and you can check out all the ways to connect with us, follow us on social media. The links for that are in the show notes as well. You can check out our merch. We have some new swag in the shop. I made stickers because some of you all said you wanted stickers. So I made you stickers, and they're in the shop now. You can put them on your laptop, your water bottles, your notebooks, your cars, wherever you want to put them, wherever you want to slap those things, put them on there. And then I said water bottles. We have some water bottles in the shop now too. So go check those out. The link to the shop is in the show notes and in everywhere else you connect with us and follow us. So that's there for you. Okay, today's story, peaceful birth, followed by PPD and PTSD with Jamie. Couple of main topics and things that we cover. We talk about the importance of birth stories, why home birth, prenatal yoga, resources for birth and postpartum planning, PPD and PTSD. So for those that's relevant, or if it helps to be aware of that, we get into some elements around those topics. So just as a heads up. And we also talk about EMDR therapy. Thank you to Jamie. Quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll hear Jamie's story. Hi, Jamie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
We are super happy to have you. We appreciate you getting up early and hanging out with us, Jamie.
Thank you. Yep, it's been fun.
That's so cool. Yeah, we had a lot of fun before hitting record. Lots of witty banter on our part, and then just sharing and conversations. And Jamie, you shared how you've listened to a lot of the podcast. So I love that.
And a lot of birth stories in general.
Yeah. You guys were one of the first birth podcasts that I had encountered. And I love hearing people's stories. It's so inspiring. And that really helped me to gain more confidence going into my own birth. Just knowing the things that got people through their birth and what helped them, just knowing all the things, all the directions that birth could go to. It just really helped.
Yeah.
Stories and watching births. I mean, that's one of the things that for Sarah and I think it was a big game changer. When we were working with our midwife, she was recommending that we go and watch births. And up until that point, the only birth that I saw was in middle school with the Miracle of Life health class video.
Yeah, probably from the 70s.
Yeah. And so to watch births and then to hear about people's stories, like you're saying, Jamie, it's inspiring. You can see yourself in other people's stories and hear about how they made it through tough times. So we're right there with you.
Yeah, I watched so many YouTube birth videos. I'm the kind of person that would watch it while eating breakfast.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it is so cool how there is a lot of great content out there now to get around birth, and it can really fit your personality. It can really fit your birth intentions and your birth plan. Just over the past few years, I feel like even since starting the podcast, I feel like when we started the podcast back in 2016, there wasn't a ton, or if there was, I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah. I think both of those things. There wasn't a ton and we didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And so now there's more and we know more about it. So it seems like you could find anything that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So Jamie, tell us a little bit about you and your life.
Okay. So I live here in Utah, just about 30 miles north of Salt Lake. I have a almost 3-year-old daughter, Persephone. She'll be turning 3 in April, which, as we all know as parents, I can't believe it. It's just going by too fast. Her dad's name is Michael. Me and him actually ended up getting a divorce this year, but we get along really well, and we're doing an amazing job at co-parenting. And Persephone did such a great job with the transition, and she's never complained about going to each other's houses. She's just excited to be with Papa and excited to be with Mama. So yeah, that definitely helps.
That's great.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And so I'm also an Ayurvedic health practitioner. And for those that aren't familiar with Ayurveda, it is the alternative medicine system that originated in India. And they take an approach on focusing on the mind, body, and spirit. And they believe everyone is, a unique individual. And so they come up with a personalized treatment plan for everyone that can include herbal formulas that they design, and incorporating yoga and diet is a major thing, and how you eat as well. And just whatever we feel like the client needs. So yeah, that's actually how I realized that I love pregnancy and just learning about the female body and what goes on during pregnancy. I just was so fascinated by it. And my sister was pregnant with her first child around that time. And I just realized I was kind of obsessed with the whole time in a person's life. Pregnancy, birth, postpartum is just such a miracle, honestly, and such an amazing time. So a couple years, or maybe like a year after I graduated from the Ayurveda college, I got trained as a birth doula, and I did that for a little while. But I love being at birth. It's amazing. I quickly realized that lifestyle is not for me personally. Being on call all the time was, kind of a challenge, and I knew that would be even more challenging with having kids.
Yeah.
And I love it, and I love doulas. I mean, I had the most amazing doula for me, and I loved the amount of knowledge that I gained from that training, and that really did help me prepare for birth. So yeah, and I'm currently a student to become a sonographer, better known as an ultrasound tech, and I will be doing ultrasounds with babies. So I'm super excited about this new journey.
Yeah, and still in the birth world, and just a different angle to it, and a different setting and environment and experience and tool into your tool belt of birth junkiness.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
When you were doing the Ayurvedic studies and getting into that, what was one of the things about birth that just had you in awe, like pregnancy and birth? You talked about your sister was pregnant at the time. So yeah, what is one of the things that you just find so magical about being pregnant?
Just how honestly hard it is to actually become pregnant. Like, what has to happen for pregnancy to occur? And that's why I say it's truly a miracle for all the people that are here, I believe. And just all the changes that the body goes through, the organs moving and shifting, and the hips getting wider, and I think it's your ligaments, your whole body becomes more loose, so that it can expand, and grow a belly, and just the strength that pregnant people have to be able to have their body do that, and it just does it on its own, and how the body is just aware of it just knows how to give birth on its own. So it's just really fascinating to me.
As you were sharing, I thought it would be so interesting to see like a a graphic of a woman's body as it goes through the physiological changes over birth, like to see the hip bones and then over the course of the month, see how they change and rearrange. And I'm sure something 3D.
That would be cool.
Yeah, like a 3D thing like that probably exists somewhere online.
There are some like time lapse.
Yeah.
What really got me about watching something like that, because I've seen a few of them, is the organs shifting.
Yeah, see
that will just like blow your mind, how everything has to rearrange, and it's like this belly feng shui of how all of the organs have to shift to accommodate for this human. Seeing that, and then seeing how, you know, the spine and the pelvis and the impact and the shifting there, you know, this a transformer like experience. Yeah, it is really cool. There are things like that out there. We'll have to find one and put a link to it for the show notes, since you've talked about it.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah, cool. So then, Jamie, how did home birth come in the mix for you? Is that something that you were looking at and exploring, like through your doula work? You know, had you attended some? I would imagine you would have, but I won't assume there. But just, did you know before becoming pregnant that that's something you wanted to experience, or did it kind of come along later?
I definitely knew, I don't remember exactly when it was that I decided home birth, but when my sister was pregnant, around the time of studying Ayurveda and becoming a birth doula, definitely before doing the birth doula training, I knew that I wanted to do a home birth. Okay. So somewhere during that time, it first started out with me knowing I did not want to be in a hospital.
Yeah.
I did not want to have people I didn't know assisting me in one of the most vulnerable times in a person's life. I didn't want to have these bright lights and noises and having it be a cold room, and just, I knew that my body wouldn't be able to fully surrender to birthing, and I wanted to be comfortable and allow the process to happen without just, you know, all these things triggering and getting in the way of being able to focus on birth. So I knew I didn't want that. And obviously I was a little nervous about the pain and not being able to have access to pain medication. But I knew that I could work through the pain and handle that. And I would much rather go that route than being in a hospital close to medication. And so I thought about, you know, birth centers or home birth. And I'm like, I don't want to be laboring in the car. I don't want to have to worry about what time should we leave or getting there too early. I just wanted to be in my own home and to not have to go anywhere and to be able to crawl into bed afterwards. That just sounded like the best thing for me.
Got it. Okay. And so what sort of plans did you make when you were pregnant and you're like, okay, home birth? Did you have an idea of the care you wanted, who you wanted there, sort of the experience that you wanted to have? How did you formulate those things?
So I chose my midwife before I was pregnant.
Nice.
When we started in the process of conceiving, I wanted to make sure I found the right midwife and to be able to have her be my midwife. I didn't know how booked out, you know, they were. And so the first midwife that we went to, I just fell in love with her. I'm like, that's the woman I want to assist my birth. She's this super amazing, beautiful, little petite woman with long silver hair. She reminds me of this just happy, energetic little fairy. Oh. And she's been a midwife for 30 years and she's never missed a birth. Wow. Her name's Melissa Mayo, and she's just incredible. I'm so glad that I went with her. So that was easy. And then I didn't want too many people there. I knew I wanted my mama to be there. She's never seen a birth, you know, she's never been at another person's birth or seen how a home birth is done. So I thought it would be a cool experience for her, and just having that motherly, nurturing energy there. She's so sweet and compassionate and just has this calming energy. So wanted her to be there. And then I also wanted one of my sisters to be there. At the time, my sister lived in the mother-in-law basement. And so I really wanted her to be there, but she had to be out of town for, I think it was a work thing. So my mom actually was dog sitting for her. So my mom was already in the house. And then I had one of my close friends do pictures. And then I had my doula, Destiny Olson. She was amazing. And she's a prenatal yoga teacher. So she got me into doing prenatal classes, which was a lifesaver. So yeah, that was my birth team.
That's great.
And I had a birth plan set up too. And I also knew that birth can go in its own direction, but to have certain things and a list of, if we did have to transfer, like a list of things to give the healthcare workers there that I wanted and didn't want, like delayed cord clamping and for people to be quiet when coming in, just certain things like that.
Gotcha.
I have two questions. One is about the prenatal yoga, and the other is about the list that you gave the healthcare workers, or that you had prepared for healthcare workers if you needed it. For prenatal yoga, what about it was life-changing for you? I think that's the word that you used, as it relates to your pregnancy and birth.
So it really, I recommend prenatal yoga to everyone now. It just really helps me with my breath and learning how to utilize my breath to get through situations. Like that's a big thing of what yoga is learning how to breathe and get through uncomfortable yoga positions and staying present with that. And so learning how to do that while focusing on birth was really beneficial. And then also learning how to push. You know, I hear stories of how usually I think births in hospitals, how they'll say, push like you're, you know, like pushing poop out, you know, and in yoga, they say, no, that is not the way that you want to focus on pushing. You know, it's different. And so they, you know, my yoga teacher, and she taught us how to push in a right way. And then just like the stretches that you need while you have a big belly and your body's doing all these changes. The breath work, teaching how to push, and then just stretching the body and strengthening certain muscles that will benefit birth.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, prenatal yoga comes up a lot with the moms that we talk to as a practice. So I think for those who haven't yet explored it, just hearing the reasons why it was impactful for you is a great thing that maybe somebody listening now might go and check out a class somewhere near them. For my second question, it had to do with the list of things that you did and did not want that you prepared in the event of a hospital transfer. And my question is, who on your team, on your birth team, was assigned with having that list, and in the event that there was a transfer, sharing that list with the healthcare workers and explaining to them, and then really advocating on your part?
So that was 100% my doula. And she had been to the hospital many times, and she knew a lot of the healthcare providers. And the hospital that we chose to transfer to, it was the closest one. And they also have a lot of nurse midwives, and they're very baby friendly. So they're, you know, they honor and they're familiar with these requests of delayed cord clamping and certain things. So yeah, she had the list. She was prepared. She knew some of the people. So I felt really comfortable having her advocate for me.
Nice. That's awesome. And again, I think that's just a really great thing to have in your mind, is what it is that you do and do not want to experience, and then have somebody on your team who understands what you do and don't want, who can then advocate on your behalf. Because, you know, if you did have to go to the hospital and you're in the throes of labor, you don't want to be advocating for yourself. You want somebody who can step in and take care of those conversations, and you don't even have to get distracted by them. So I think it's just great how you had all the things thought out in advance, and you had somebody on your squad who was ready for you. It's cool.
That was a big thing, was just being fully prepared. So I knew that, like, okay, I can just focus on what I need to, just birthing this baby. Everyone's got everything else taken care of.
Yeah.
That was huge. So I definitely recommend that.
I'm curious, beyond your training in your own work and then your own preparation that you had done, having your midwife and your doula as resources, was there any other resource that was really helpful for you that you could maybe share with those who might be interested in checking out other options, whether it's books or classes or things like that?
So I did hypnobirthing, and I didn't attend a class. I just got like a book and like MP3s to download. And that helped a lot. It helped me just work through any fears, anything I needed to, you know, get out of the way that could show up in birth. And most of it I was already prepared for, but it just kind of solidified and had me, you know, make sure that there wasn't anything lingering. There's a bunch of books that I read, and other podcasts. I don't know if you want me to mention it now or at the end for the resources.
You can go ahead now.
But a big one was Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us know who Ina May Gaskin is, and she's incredible. So yeah, her book, Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, was really great. Birthing from Within is another amazing book. I didn't get too involved with like all the things you can do, like the crafts, and there's a lot that you can really do.
There is a lot of activities. Yeah,
it's amazing. But I felt like I had a lot with like the hypnobirthing and like just my own personal knowledge and training. And I also, another book that was really great was Breastfeeding Made Simple. It just really helped me learn the basics of what to expect and how to go about nursing. So that was a huge one. And then Mama Natural has a book, Week by Week Guide to Pregnancy and Childbirth. And that was amazing. That's so cool how she will tell you what's going on during each, like pretty much each week of the pregnancy. And then she'll give you foods and certain things that will help with the development of the baby at that time. So that was a really cool one too.
That's great.
Ooh, great resources.
Yeah.
And then podcasts.
Yeah, for sure.
Podcast. So your guys's, I listened to all of your episodes. I just was obsessed with your podcast. It was my favorite, still is. And the Birthful podcast was great. The Informed Pregnancy podcast, and Birth Queens, which is sadly not a live podcast anymore, but they still have their episodes up. But that duo they're so funny. It just, I learned a lot, and they have some great stories. And and two other resources. Evidence-Based Birth is a great site to go in and just find out the evidence on pretty much everything birth and pregnancy related. And then Spinning Babies is another great one to learn positions to prepare for the body. And if you do have a breech baby, different positions you can work on. And actually, towards the end of my birth, I would sit on my birth ball for a certain amount of time every day and lean forward just to make sure that the baby would stay in the proper position.
That's great. That's an awesome list. We're going to compile that. We're going to put it together for listeners and put it in the show notes. So, if you're driving or you're somewhere, you're like, wait, what was all of that? Or, can't pull over right this second and write all those things down. We'll put it in the show notes. So just don't worry. You can go back and find all the links. That's awesome. Cool. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about birthing time. Okay. So can you walk us through birthing time?
Yes. So I was sleeping and I woke up to use the bathroom. And as I sat up, I felt a little gush, not much, like a full water breaking, but enough where I was, typical, did I just pee or is that my water leaking? And so going to the bathroom and having more of the clear liquid come out, I was like, okay, this is my water breaking a bit. And so I let my midwife know, and then I just went back to bed. I laid down and I let Michael sleep, and nothing really happened. I felt like a couple tinges, like light cramping, but nothing that interrupted the rest of my sleep. And then let's see, when I got up, so throughout the rest of that day, I had just mild contractions just randomly, and they didn't progress or get closer together or anything. It was just kind of letting me know that things were starting to happen. So talking with my midwife and doula, my midwife recommended that I use the breast pump for nipple stimulation, which can help bring on labor. So I did that for, I think she recommended like an hour, and that didn't really help. And so then my doula suggested that we go on a walk. It was a beautiful day. It was the end of April. And she's like, you don't know when you're going to be able to take a walk, how long it's going to be until you can take a walk again. So we did that, and that's what kicked in the contractions. So that was around 7 p.m. So at 4 a.m. is when I woke up and my water started to leak a little bit. And then 7 o'clock at night was when the contractions started to kick in and be more consistent.
Okay.
And so we got back to the house, And I was able to handle it for a while. The first 4 hours, I was just happy laboring on my own. I sat on my birth ball, and my main thing was I love to lean forward. That was just the position that I liked doing. So the first 4 hours, I was sitting on the birth ball a lot. And then when things became more intense, I contacted my doula and asked her to come over. That was around 11. And she got there at around midnight. And as soon as she got there, it's like my body just fully relaxed and was able to surrender more, because I knew that she could take on whatever needed to happen, and I could just focus on breathing and moving through the contractions. So my labor started to kick up pretty quickly, and she recommended laying down and trying to rest a little bit, but I hated laying down, and it just kept getting more intense. And so then the doula recommended contacting the midwife, and I think she contacted her around 1. And I was in the bathroom leaning over the counter a lot, and we tried going outside, but I didn't, my mind was too focused on, I didn't want to make any sounds to cause any distractions to the neighbors. That was just too far in my mind, because it was like 1 a.m. I'm like, I don't want to be that loud. Laboring woman who's waking up her neighbors. So that got in the way. So we went back inside, and I spent a lot of the time standing in the kitchen, leaning over the counter. And by that time, I imagine it was around like 1:30, and my midwife got there at 2. And when she got there, I was starting to dry heave. And I realized that this was active labor, which is the typical time that throwing up and having that, dry heaving motion happen. And I remember walking around and looking at my doula saying, I don't want to do this ever again. And I said, I'm like, this would be so much easier if I wasn't so nauseous. And that was another thing during my pregnancy. I didn't have the hypermesis, super, intense sickness, but I was really nauseous the entire time. And so, I'm like, this would just be so much more doable and easier if I wasn't feeling so sick. And I felt, so the dry heaving, that didn't last for very long. And then I felt like I needed to go use the bathroom. So we walked over to the bathroom, sat down. And that's when I realized, the dry heaving motion was like the pushing motion going up. And then when I sat down, I realized, oh, my body is ready to push. Like I feel that sensation that it's trying to push. Like I'm ready to go on to that stage. So I told them that, and we had a birth tub set up, but because my waters had broke earlier, they don't want you to spend that much time in the water. And so I couldn't get in for a while. And then plus things progressed so fast. So when the midwife got there is when they started filling up the tub. And when I started feeling the pushing sensations, there was enough water for me to be able to get in. And I didn't have any cervical checks during my whole pregnancy, just didn't want them, didn't need them. And my midwife just asked if she could do a cervical check when I got in there. And so she checked me, and I was at 10 centimeters fully dilated. And she was like, "Hey, you've got to go, just continue pushing." And nobody helped me, coach me through the pushing. I just was able to focus and do it on my own. I started pushing by leaning over the tub, and I did that for a little bit, but then my midwife recommended me leaning back against the tub so that I could rest in between the contractions. And so I did that, and then I would just kind of lean up on my knees during the contractions, and those felt really good to me. And that's another thing. Once the pushing stage happened, I'm the person that liked that. Like,
Same.
Okay, sweet. I know we're getting close. I get to do something.
Totally.
Not just my body taking over. Like I get to contribute. So I really liked that part of it. And so when the crowning was happening, that's when my midwife was guiding me through the breathing. She's like, breathe as if you're breathing through a straw. And that breathing technique helped with the crowning. And it definitely had the burning sensation that we're all aware of, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. Like, oh, okay, this is doable. and none of my labor, I wasn't screaming. I wasn't using loud vocals. I had more of like the low kind of oming tones that really helped. And instead of like having the loud yelling that my, body naturally wanted to do, instead of having that go outwards, I had it focus on being inwards and pushing. And like, I've heard that gets in the way. Like if you're screaming and yelling a lot during the pushing stage, that can interfere with actually pushing. So I remembered that and just was, internalizing the loudness and just focusing on pushing. So when the baby's head was starting to come out more, my midwife recommended, oh, I can see the head. If you want to reach down and feel the head, you're welcome to do so. And so I did, and I loved it. That definitely gave me the motivation to keep going. It's like, my baby's so close to being here. And so I really liked that. And so let's see, I only ended up pushing for 30 minutes. Shortly after I was filling the head, baby was ready to come out, and I gave, the last final big pushes. And then my midwife reached in and she helped the body kind of gently come out on that last push. And I was leaning back on the birth tub, and she handed her and put her on my chest. And I mean, you can't explain in words what that feeling is like. It was just the most surreal and magical moment in my life. And also shocked. Like, I kind of felt like I was dreaming. Like, this whole thing that you plan and anticipate and prepare for it, it's like, whoa, this baby is in my arms. Like, that is crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
And she wasn't crying or anything. And so the midwife just did a little suction. And it's not like she was in distress or anything. She looked good. But yeah, she just suctioned out a little bit of the goop. And then she started to cry because she was, upset. Like, why are you sticking something in my nose, my mouth? Like, get that out of there. And then she cried just for a little bit. And then she's still to this day, she is so calm and just very conscious and aware of her surroundings, and just conscious and aware of her surroundings. And she honestly did not cry the rest of the night until they did, the measuring and, stretching her body. They're so used to being curled up in a warm place. Like, I would be crying too if it was cold, and they were like, okay, stretch really tall.
Yeah.
So Michael was right there. My doula was right behind me. And we didn't know the gender. So we wanted to be surprised. And so I asked, shortly after the baby was born, what's the gender? And people were like, oh yeah, let's check. But then they got distracted and they weren't, checking. And so I'm sitting there like, interacting a little bit, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, I really want to know the gender. And so I asked again, I'm like, please, like, will someone check and see, am I holding a little boy or girl? And so Michael finally checked, and he was like, she's a girl. And I thought the whole time I was pregnant with a boy. I just kind of felt more boy energy. There was a couple times that this really strong girl energy came in, but I thought I had a little boy in my belly. So I was shocked and obviously, just really thrilled regardless. And so I tried nursing in the tub, but I didn't like that. The water wasn't as warm as I wanted. And that's another thing. I wish I could have been in the water longer, because feeling that warm sensation, I knew I would have been in there a lot longer, and it would have helped with the contractions and handling them. But and so I went onto the couch and laid down. That's where I delivered the placenta. That came out just fine. And then Persephone just latched on right away. Like nursing was just no big deal. She just what she needs to do something, she figures it out and she does it. So to this day, she's very focused and particular and very smart. So nursing was pretty easy discomfort as well at the beginning. But yeah, no infections or mastitis or anything with that aspect. So it honestly was just a really beautiful, peaceful birth. It was great having my mama there, and she ended up cutting the cord. I thought that was cool for her to be able to experience that. And we had, all the lights were dim, and we had just this really relaxing music playing and candles lit. And so we didn't allow any flash photography when she was born. We didn't want any bright lights, in her face.
Yeah.
That would be shocking. And we didn't want anyone to really be loud and to yell like, "Oh my gosh, yay!" Like, we just wanted it to remain a very calm and peaceful space for her. So yeah, I think that definitely helped with her not really crying a lot, from coming out of a warm, comfortable, soundless belly. Yeah, and then it was just wonderful being in our own home. And I had my placenta encapsulated, and they cut chunks. I believe my midwife cut chunks of the placenta so that they could make placenta smoothies, because it would take a few days for the encapsulation to happen.
Right.
And so they gave me a smoothie right after, and I believe that it did help having that, in my postpartum period. And yeah, like, she was just so healthy and happy, and it was amazing. It was an 8-hour labor from 7 until it was 3:15 a.m. that she was born. And she was actually born on my parents' anniversary, which was really cool. Cool. And she was born at 3:17, which is like my dad's birthday. His birthday is on March 17th. So I think it's fun to have those.
That's very cool.
Yeah, we love those little synchronicities.
Yeah.
We collect those every day. We're just like, oh, this and this, or, like you said, with timing or dates or numbers or things that just pop up. I love that stuff. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Me too. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I'm so happy for you that you could have that experience and that you were supported in it. And I feel a lot of similarities too when you talk about certain elements of the birth, like the enjoyment, so to speak, in pushing. I totally resonate with that and relate to that. And then that moment of shock element when baby arrives and is on your chest, and it's all these things, it's all these emotions, and yet it's also ineffable, like, meaning there are no words for it. So I totally get all of that as well. I can very much connect with that. And that's one thing I love about sharing our birth stories, that you can have that really deep connection with another person, like another mom sharing parts of theirs that, is similar to yours. I feel just like this heart swell kind of thing come up for me when I hear elements like that to your story. And even if there are ones that I didn't necessarily experience, but I could imagine, or I could, just as a mother and just as someone who has birthed, like, wow, you just have this awe for the whole thing. And so that's why I just love being able to keep telling these stories every week.
Yeah, it's amazing. And honestly, like, I did feel really empowered afterwards, and that feeling of, I can do hard things. And I'd heard so many other stories of these, birth people explaining how they felt afterwards. And I felt like mine wasn't as intense as theirs. Like, it was, I was amazed. I was really surprised that I was able to do that, and with how well I was able to move through the things. Like, I never said, I can't do this. It was just like, I'm doing this. This is happening. I'm surrendering. And it was huge. Having my doula there was huge. Like, she was there and helping me through every single contraction, doing the hip squeeze. I mean, I look at like pictures of the birth. I'm like, I don't remember her squeezing my hips. I don't remember sitting over there. It's just so funny how we don't remember, certain things. And so yeah, like I just felt, I was really proud of myself afterwards, but I also just felt like this is just something we do. Like it was just, it's natural. Like this is awesome, but it's just another part of what I do through this experience. So yeah, I found that kind of interesting that I wasn't as like, yes, this is changing my life.
Yeah.
Now I can do this and this and this. Like it just was like something natural.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that. One thing about your story that we talked about briefly before the interview, and then when we were setting up having this conversation, is an element of your postpartum experience that you wanted to share, and that I feel like so many will get something out of and feel heard and feel understood. And I was wondering if you're open to going into some of that.
Yes, of course. So the first month after giving birth, I pretty much spent in bed. The birth took it out of me. I had some health issues before I got pregnant, so I wasn't very strong and healthy. And so the first 2 weeks I could barely walk, and they do recommend really spending as much time in bed that first month as you can. It's really, really good for the healing process. And I was very fortunate that I was able to spend that time. And so I've dealt with depression, pretty much my whole life. And so I was kind of preparing in a sense for postpartum depression to be a thing, and also like anxiety. And I, studied and researched, what kind of signs to look for. My doula also, gave us information and told Michael to be aware of certain things that might be happening, just to like observe and she would check in with us and say like, okay, how are you doing for a while afterwards? Which, I felt a lot of support around that. And I knew that something was off. I felt the depression. I felt the exhaustion, the hormonal shift. I mean, it is a lot what we go through during the postpartum period, and is not talked about nearly enough. Everyone plans so much for the birth and then just kind of gets blindsided with postpartum. So I highly recommend to everyone really, really plan and prepare for the postpartum. And so, yeah, I would talk to people about how I was feeling. I just felt a lot of anxiety and a lot of intense negative emotions towards Michael. And I didn't know why. And when I would talk to people, they're like, oh yeah, my partner was so annoying. He drove me crazy. And they're like, that's just normal. You're tired. And I could relate to that, but deep down inside, I knew it was different. Mm-hmm. And so later on, like this happened for like a year plus after. And I've always seen therapists. And so I started seeing a therapist, and I've been seeing therapists to help with past sexual traumas. And I see them, that I make sure I see therapists that do EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it is a huge thing that helps with traumas and PTSD. So I started seeing one, and I was talking to her about my experience and how I was feeling. And she was like, you are getting triggered every day whenever you are around Michael. And it's true. Like I would get in this fear-based fight or flight mode, panic anytime he would enter the room, anytime he would come close to me. And it's because my body was reacting as if I was around an abuser, just because it was a male energy. Yeah. And it had nothing to do with him. It was just my body's PTSD and how it was reacting from the act of giving birth. Now, even though I had such a magical, beautiful birth, it honestly was exactly how I planned and wanted, which is super rare. I know that, and I'm grateful for it. And so it just, shows that you can have this beautiful birth that didn't seem traumatic, but yet still have PTSD and trauma show up from past experiences. And it's just the act of, no matter what, the body goes through trauma when giving birth. It just does. And it's very common for that process to bring up PTSD for anyone that's had any type of sexual abuse. And I thought I had prepared enough for it and worked through it. And so I didn't think that I would have anything really show up, but it was nice to know that I wasn't just crazy and that there was a reason that I was feeling this uncomfortable for this long. And so we started working through it with my therapist and doing more EMDR therapy, and the triggers got less and less. And I just wish that I would have known what was going on a lot sooner. Like over a year later of experiencing that, I could have been working on it a lot sooner, and it would have helped so many things. So I feel like that's a big part of my story that I want to share with people that might be going through something similar, so they know, like, if you feel like it's different than just postpartum depression and you have experienced past sexual traumas, that it's very likely that you could be experiencing PTSD. And if you haven't done EMDR therapy before, I definitely recommend it. So yeah, that was quite a postpartum experience.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you for sharing part of that, because as you said, for someone who might be asking themselves a lot of the questions that you were asking, or having some of the thoughts or feelings or emotions, am I crazy? Does this make sense? Is this normal? What level or degree? Is this just part of it? Or is there something a few layers deeper? So for that person, absolutely. And for the person who is potentially a year away from it kind of hitting a head like you described. So for the person who maybe hasn't experienced their birth yet, or just experienced their birth, to kind of be aware based on any existing past trauma, whatever it is, however you would classify it, or just your personality, or how you tend to deal with chronic periods of challenge or stress. If you know how you might tend to lean, or what your defaults might be, or what modes you might go into, whether that's forms of depression or anxiety, to do as much as you possibly can, to have the conversations, to inform your care providers, inform your birth team, so that you could kind of cut it off at the pass, so to speak, or at least minimize how it could go. So for those who are in it right now, but then also this could be a really great proactive measure for those who might be concerned about this possibility for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And a book that I didn't mention earlier that was recommended to me, and that's highly recommended to anyone that's experienced trauma, it's called When Survivors Give Birth. It's by Penny Simkin and Phyllis Claus. And yeah, it's supposed to really help you prepare for like whatever triggers might show up, like during pregnancy, and procedures that they do during pregnancy and the birth and all that. For me personally, I didn't read all of it, but that's just my own, thing. It gives, has stories of experiences that other people had in the past. And for me, my heart and stomach couldn't handle reading what other people had gone through.
Yeah.
But that's just me. And but it's supposedly an amazing book that I wish that I wish that I would have been able to move through it, because it probably would have helped with the postpartum period.
There's two things from what you shared that stand out to me, and the first is I didn't know that birth, just as in and of itself, can be this traumatic event that triggers things. Because you said birth, just it is trauma. Your body goes through some form of trauma, and that makes sense. Seeing that there's a recovery period, like a pretty prolonged recovery period. So just the fact that trauma can trigger things that maybe you didn't think were connected, or you didn't think would come up. I think that to me is a takeaway that I imagine folks listening can think about that for themselves. And then the second thing that comes up for me is the trust and intuition, because you said that you would share things with people and they would say, oh, that's just normal postpartum. It's like you're kind of going through the normal postpartum, but it sounds like you knew and felt within you that this is a little different. And at some point you sought out some help for what you could identify was different than the quote unquote normal postpartum. So listening to that intuition and trusting intuition is another one of the points that I take away from your sharing.
Yeah, it's so yeah. I mean, I'm very intuitive with myself and just in general. And it was, I mean, but it was such a strong sensation and it was just overpowering. And so it was kind of easy for me to realize this is different. But, you know, when you do have those feelings, you know, act on them for sure.
Yeah.
And people have great advice and they're there to help you, but do you know what's best for yourself? You know better than anyone. So follow those feelings and intuitions, and yeah, see, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, it's normal. We as postpartum people need a lot of help.
Yeah.
Anywhere from someone coming over and cleaning our house, or doing dishes, or bringing food, supporting through emotional meltdowns. I mean, all of it. So I know it can be hard for some people to ask for help, but put that aside and get the help that you need when you need it.
To continue that thought, you mentioned if you have these feelings and your intuition is talking to you, to act on it. What are some other ways that people can act on it? So clearly going and asking for help is one way to act on it. But what are other ways so that, you know, they don't find themselves just pushing those feelings down and not trusting their intuition? What are some other ways that people can act on it?
So I think, you know, just researching different things about the postpartum period, you know, if they're feeling depressed, and, you know, research what postpartum depression could be. And, you know, there might be a list of things that they see and they're like, oh my gosh, I resonate with that. And so kind of getting more clarity around what you might be feeling would be great. You know, if you have a doula or midwife, talking to them about it. And just anyone that specializes in what you're experiencing. So if you're wanting to see a therapist for your postpartum depression, look for a therapist that specializes in that.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Yeah. Jamie, you're so awesome. I just love how you have articulated everything in your whole experience. And, you know, you've shared the personal aspects, and you've also tied it into some really great lessons and takeaways for listeners. And I'm so excited that, you know, you being a longtime listener, listening to every episode, can now, you know, contribute your story to the space and kind of like, you know, put your brick in the wall of like what we're creating here. So I just love that you could be a part of this. I'm so honored that you would share all of this with us. And I'm very grateful. So thank you so much. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet to hear. And I'm so happy I got my brick in the wall.
It's fantastic. Jamie, I just want to acknowledge you for the wealth of resources that you shared. And once again, we're going to have links to everything.
Everything. All the things.
I mean, from... you must have had a list next to you and reading them off while we were talking, because there's just from websites to books to podcasts. You shared things that anybody who wants to take it a step further, take their preparation or education a step further, they've got some things to check out. So thank you for everything Sarah said. You know, your sharing, your openness, your vulnerability, your willingness and desire to help others who are in situations similar to you. And thank you for coming to this conversation prepared with the list of resources that helped you, so that now you can potentially introduce some of these to other folks. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, you guys.
Quick note about the Doing It at Home podcast. Matthew and I are not doctors or medical professionals, and nothing we say should be taken as medical advice or opinion. If you have medical or health-related questions, please take them to a trained professional. We're here simply to entertain you with stories and conversations about pregnancy, birth, and parenthood.